So we'll get started with at least the list of the stuff. And again, as of yesterday, I don't have a lot in the way of a PowerPoint, so this will be about it. Today we're going to focus on a number of more CAD sort of oriented topics for you. Again, because of the way the sheets that were presented with this particular presentation set, or this bid set we're put together, we have some tasks ahead of us that we need to utilize that will allow us to make the overall estimating for this particular project come together. So that's about the extent of my PowerPoint right there for you, just to sort of give you an idea of what's coming up. And to give you a bit of a review then of what we've got, here's the actual sheets that we're going to be dealing with. I've sort of labeled these for today's presentation. This will be the first sheet that we'll be working on, the west side part of the project. And sheet number 2 then will be what I called the east side part of the project. And then the third sheet was actually sort of a settling pond over here or a detention pond. So this will be my pond sheet. And all these sheets were basically published at a 20 scale with a non-north rotation angle. And they also each had a bit of overlap with the other sheets that were part of this overall part. So they each had some overlap with one another, and that in itself would provide a little bit of challenge that we then have to overcome when we want to put this overall bid together. So some of this material will be a little bit of an overlap from the material presented yesterday. And because we have, again, so much material that we do need to cover, I'm not going to go through and do these real time all today. So I'm going to skip over some material and actually fast forward over some of this stuff so we don't have to sit here and just have you watch me do the same things over and over and over again. So with that, we'll get into the software and we'll take a look. So let me close down my PDFs here, and we will get into the software. So like yesterday, we'll get into Carlson 2019 with the IntelliCAD engine. And like yesterday, what I want to do is start off with basically a brand new drawing. And we left off yesterday with an OTC job. This is where I was going to start to put all of my essential project content. But what I want to do is start to build individual little drawings of each of my 3 sheets. So to begin, what I'm going to do is say I want to bring in a new drawing. And again, this is all sort of similar from yesterday, so I'm not going to take a lot of time to explain this. But the first drawing I want to start off with will be a civil-based. And I'll just call this my west drawing. Oops, I need to go up one folder here. I'm in the wrong folder. So in my OTC folder, I'm going to call this my C-West drawing file. And let's just give it a 20 scale horizontal scale factor. And again, this was in State Plain, Missouri Central. And sort of like what we saw before, same path and coordinate file information. And like we did earlier, what I want to do is reference in the main base plan. So again, to do that, just as a quick recap, I'm just going to go ahead in my external reference, and I'm going to attach in the general base plan drawing. And this just helps me again with getting sort of a preliminary location of where my geographical coordinate system will be. And when I issue my zoom extents, simple ZE zoom extents command will do this. This gets me sort of in the ballpark for my coordinates. And what I want to do then is just sort of get this out of the way here just a little bit, and then bring in what will become the west location for my first sheet. So on my toolbar then, I'm going to go grab my first sheet and bring in sheet number 6 now, and open it up. And when we bring it in, everything else will be the same, and we'll just say insert line work. And we'll place it back in. And one of the things that we're going to notice now is we'll place it, let's say, right down over in here. rotation angle, again 0, default scale 20 now, and we'll bring this sheet in, and because that particular sheet had a non-north rotation angle, I didn't know what that rotation angle was. It was not provided in terms of actually being labeled on the sheet. We are going to have to make an account for that rotation angle later on when it's brought into and oriented later on with the rest of the drawing. So again, with all the hatch entities, you probably might see some flashing here of the display, but I'll just work through that. And what I want to do then is, like I said earlier, is I want to validate the distance of my bar scale. So when I come in here and take a look at this, I'm going to come through and just double check that the distance on my bar scale is accurate. So I'm going to say inquiry, and I'm just going to do a standard distance check here, and I'm going to say going from the endpoint of that marker right over there to the endpoint right there, and that shows 60.0001. And again, I believe that the bar scale here is probably just a little out of whack. So if I go back and just double check it, looking from there to maybe right there, it shows exactly 40 as I would expect. So there must be something in this particular bar scale in that PDF that might be a little out of whack. But I think for all intents and purposes, this is fine. So this distance to me checks out. Everything is okay. And like what we did earlier, what I want to do is erase all the hatch patterns out of here because, again, these are little inefficient entities that I don't need to have inside of my drawing. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply issue an erase command. I'll run that filter command like I showed you again yesterday, getting just the hatch entities out of the drawing. And that will remove 46,000 entities out of this particular drawing that I don't need. And with those entities gone then, what I want to do is now generate a match line, something that I can use to cleave off part of this drawing so that when I have the other drawing to the east part of this site, I can say, okay, let's form a more precise match line that I can make these things match up to one another. So with that, what I'm going to do is draw in or create a brand new layer. And actually, I guess what I can do here right now is, for right now, I'm going to unload, or actually I can probably just even detach for right now this external reference. So again, with my old DOS skills here, I'm just going to go ahead and detach the external reference just because I don't need that getting in the way. And I'm going to issue my save command because, again, these are things that I just get in the habit of doing. And once I have my rather larger drawing detached, we'll go ahead and wait for that to get caught up here. And it's because it's got a lot of these things that needs to get undone here. Then I'll be in a position where I can then create my match lines. There we go. And let's go ahead and hit my save. Now I'm in good shape. So one of the first things I'll do then is create a layer for my match line. So I will just go ahead and just show you real quickly in the layer control. We've got a lot of extraneous layers in here that I probably don't need at this point. One of the other tools that I do like frequently is, rather than carrying around all these layers that I probably don't need, maybe we should just go ahead and purge, clean this drawing up here a little bit. So I'm going to issue the File, Drawing Utilities, and Purge command. And Purge will basically get rid of anything that's not used in the drawing so that, again, it cleans it all up, makes it nice and compact. So I'll just say Purge All and let the IntelliCAD engine just get rid of what it doesn't need. And again, this helps keep the drawing sizes to the absolute minimum that they can be. And it will, again, get rid of unused blocks, unused layers, line types, and things like that. So now that we've purged out the drawing, we take a look at the layer list. We have a much more compact listing of layers. So These are the only things that were currently being used. And these are just the layers now of the colors that were in the PDF that we started with. So if I want to create a brand new layer now, I can say, well, let's create a layer called C-match, for example. MTCH is an example. And for my example here, I'll give it a color of red, just to sort of show the example here. And maybe I want to draw this as a 2D polyline. And I will draw it using that current, go ahead and create that layer. Let's make it active here. So if I go back in my layer control, I can activate that layer by simply double clicking on it, or I can highlight it and click the little check mark here. But that is now the current layer. So a good CAD skills is to say, let's make a layer current. And what I want to do then is find a very precise location. So for me, when I was taking a look at this, what I want to do is maybe say, I want the tip of this arrowhead to be a spot where my match line should be drawn to. So as I'm looking through this, I'm going to say I want to draw a polyline towards the tip of that arrow. And as I'm doing this, I should probably mention that there's no right or wrong answer here. This was just something that I sort of dreamed up, and I'm sure there's probably more CAD proficient people than I am out there looking at this saying, well, why are you doing it that way? And you can certainly do it, you know, a multitude of different ways. So as I'm out here zooming around, you can snap to pretty much whatever points are on the drawing that you want. But in this case, what I'm going to do is simply come right up here to the top, come over here and come down and close up that that polygon with the C command, and that might become then a clipping boundary that I want to utilize for what will become my match line. And what I can do then is say, all right, now I want to get rid of all the entities that are going to go up to that match line. And to do that, I'm going to say edit and erase by closed polyline. I pick the perimeter polyline that I just drew in, and I can say erase inside. And I'm going to choose all these options in here, polylines and 3D faces and solids and lines and leaders and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things you'll notice in here is hatches are not on this list. That's one of the reasons I want to get rid of them, is because they are not on there. So I'm going to go ahead and choose OK. And then it'll go through then and clean out all the things that are not in there. And what I have left then is stuff that might have a couple little remnants in here, so I can get rid of those very easily. It might be some ellipses or who knows what, so I'm just going to say erase. I'll get rid of those couple of guys, and those are now gone out of there. Okay, so the rest of these things are just, you know, remnants of a big, thicker line pattern, so that's all okay. And then what I might want to do then is utilize or reutilize this polygon for another PDF to follow. So if I right block this polygon boundary out to its own separate drawing, I can use it elsewhere. And to do that, I'm going to say draw, and let's go to a right block command now. And I will say let's write out by selecting entities this one polygon. And I'm going to say into my OTC folder, I'm going to call this my, I'll give it a drawing name of C-MTCH match 1 is my name of my block that I want. And the base point will be, and I'm going to pick up maybe the end point that I chose in here, right down in there again. And let's just double check that. I want to just go grab that again here. I'm not sure if I got that right. So let me go ahead and say the end point right there. There we go. And I'm going to say OK. Now, if I want to retain this in the drawing, I can. If I want to convert it to a block, or I can delete it from the drawing. But I'm just going to say retain it for right now. And the reason for that is that when I ultimately want to insert different drawings, so like I have drawing, the east drawing that'll be coming in and other drawings, I can use these as positional points of reference to reinsert things back together later on, which makes things sort of handy. So right now what I've done then is I've prepared this first drawing for the other content to follow. So I'll go ahead and save this one, and then we'll just go ahead and repeat the process for another drawing. So let's just do it quickly, then I'm not going to take the time to do all these in here for the other two. I'll get the second one started and then leave it off for the rest of your imaginations. But we're going to go say File, New again, and we'll use the same template drawing, and this time we'll call it a drawing of the C-East. And we'll also give it a 20 scale. And if we wanted to be fancy now, when we are coming in, let's make sure we saved this in here. That's always good. Let's reference the position of the west drawing for the east drawing. So I'm going to come in here and I can say, let's do a file XREF, and XREF Manager, attach the west drawing, and say OK, and close. And so now I've got this guy up here. There it is. And what I want to do now is, as I attach the PDF for the east part, I'll use this location as the basis for the other one. So now I'm going to say, let's do a file, and excuse me, let's just go ahead and do my PDF right here again. And let's go grab this next sheet and open it up. And again, same insert line work. And now when we come in, it'll place this next one in here. We'll put it in right over in here somewhere. Rotation angle again of 0, we don't know. Scale factor of 20. And we'll place that one in here. And now a few quick changes on this one we're going to have to make because once we have that in here, we're good there. What we're going to do is reposition that block and then make a few little changes to it. So like before, what I'm going to do is I will detach the X reference. We don't need that anymore. We just wanted it for general position purposes. So I'm going to say again XREF and detach. And now when I go through and bring in my block, actually I can also do my erase on my hatch entities. What I want to do is also go through now and just insert the clipping block that I had from before. Okay, so now I want to insert my match line, and I can do that by draw and then insert. And I can go through and say for the file that I want, I'm going to go out and browse for the file now. And the file that I want will be for my CS match one line. And I'm not going to explode it just yet. I can put it into its component parts. And the insertion point I'm going to specify on the screen. And the reason I'm doing this now is because the insertion point of this drawing is not necessarily the same as the other drawing from which it was based. So sometimes you want this to be 0, 0, 0, sometimes you don't. It all depends on really what you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say insert, and there's my clipping block. And when I go through and put it in here, then I want to make very certain now that I get the proper insertion point. And that would be the endpoint again of, and I want to make sure I get my endpoint snap set up here of the line that I had put it in at. And once I have it in there, That should be exactly where I need it to be. And at this point, what I'm going to do now is I think, okay, this is where I about need it to be, and I'm going to, and right now if I list it, see, I can just do it from my keyboard here in query and then list. This should be a single entity as a block insert. And if I simply explode it, and I can say edit and explode and just do a block explode, and let's do the original. Just do actually just my normal way is just explode. So my DOS keys, DOS commands come into play here. So now this is, if I list it again, now this will be a polyline. So now this is a lightweight polyline, which is what I wanted. And what I want to do now is simply grip the vertices of this polyline to a spot that now encompasses more of my design for my second part of this PDF. And with this out here now, it's a simple matter of saying, okay, let's go back to the edit, erase by close polyline command again. We pick up our perimeter, and this part on the western edge has not changed. And this time I'm going to say erase outside. And when I do that, everything outside will get removed, leaving just the stuff on the inside. And with that content removed now, I'll have now a nice, clean match line. So I've removed out some of the, and let me go ahead and remove those other artifacts out, and let me go ahead and save this stuff out. And I can now go ahead and save off this drawing. And I will have now a pair of drawings that I can start to work with and make use of. And from there, now I would do the exact same operation for the pond. And I would start, and actually what I would do there is, and just to give you the magic of television moment here, that's exactly what I did. So just to sort of show you the magic of TV folder that I have here, I've got my pond drawing, and when I opened it up, I'll just take a quick and show you what happened here. I created its boundary and did that, and so that was one boundary there, and cleaned it all off, and then basically superimposed it on top of the other eastern half of the east drawing. And then with that, what I was able to get were a series of independent little drawings, cookie-cutter drawings, if you will, that I can then insert on top of one another. So with that, let me go ahead and choose open. I believe I have, let me just double check here in each of my drawings, I've got the ultimate east drawing would look something like this when it was all said and done, with the pair of match lines that I had in there from a previous example, that I said, okay, here's the different match lines that I had in there. I had one match line drawn out one way, another match line drawn out another way, and then I would clip out different parts of it, and then I was left with the different shapes that I could actually utilize to bring these these together. Then, to basically bring these different drawings together, the way you do that is to say, okay, we're back to the original west and east drawings that I was working with earlier. And what I want to do now is I can basically bring one to the other. It doesn't really matter which way I want to go. Or I can start up a brand new drawing and insert both of these working prototypes into one overall drawing. It doesn't really matter how I do it. But in this case, since I've purged the layers, I believe, from this one, let's go ahead and do that exact same operation over here. So I'm going to go ahead and issue simply the purge command and purge all my layers out of here as well, so we have a nice compact little drawing. We'll get rid of all that. There we go. And let's see, I believe that was all good. There we go. So I'm going to take and insert the east drawing into the west drawing. And so we're going to go ahead and save this drawing right now. I'll close it down. And then inside of the west drawing, I'm going to say draw and insert. Draw and insert, there we go. And then browse for the east drawing. And for right now, because they share a 0, 0 coordinate system, I'm going to say use 0, 0, 0 as part of my insertion base point, and do not explode right now. I can always do that later on, and just simply say insert. Because I had referenced east to west from before, this is where they come together sort of nicely now. That lets me move these things together a little bit more precisely, and now I have the ability to say, okay, with this single block in the drawing, I can now issue a move command and move from this base point down over to here. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to say edit, and we'll do a move. And I'll take that single block, and I will go get the nice snapped base point, which will be the end point right here. Pick it up, and then I can just drag it right down to my other end point, which makes it sort of tough because I got all this other stuff in the way here, but that's okay. We'll pick it up right there, and then I have that nice perfectly formed match line. So with my two halves of my drawing then matched together, I can explode my other drawing right over here and turn it into its component parts, which we've done. I will get rid of these two match lines because I don't need those anymore. And now what we want to do is figure out if we want to get rid of some of all this hatching entities, these polylines that are in here. So one of the things that we haven't really done yet is figure out how to get rid of all this extra stuff that is not hatch entities. These are actually little polylines. So if I go ahead and list all this stuff in here, these are little lightweight polylines that were drawn in. These are not hatches, these are little lightweight polylines. So one of the things that I might want to do is think about, should I get rid of these things? So yes, let's do that. We can go underneath the edit menu. We can go down to a command that's not commonly known in here, which is the select similar routine. So I might come down and say, let's pick up maybe one of these guys right here. Just pick one, and it'll go through and grab all the other ones, and now I can simply do the erase command, and it'll erase all the ones that are like it. And all those entities then will go away. I can come up a pair of commands here and pick up one of these guys. Same thing, and it'll go through, and now I just hit erase again, and now all that grass hatch pattern will go away. Greatly simplifying then the look of my drawing and cleaning up the amount of clutter that I otherwise have to be dealing with. So underneath the edit menu, selection sets has been a great time saver. You also have the ability to select by length, by elevation, by other filters in here. So if you haven't noticed the selection set tools, take a look at them. They are a really great time saver when you have to deal with that kind of cleanup work. Then from here, it's just more of the same that we talked about in the previous session, where we went through now and start to go through and elevate the contours and start to put the some of the design entities to the desired elevation. So we talked about that, so I don't think I need to go through that again. In case for the recording, for people who don't want to sit through it, all of yesterday's sessions to sort of see what we did, I will demonstrate just two of these in here real quick. It would be a matter of taking underneath the elevate menu, assign contour elevations, multiple and series. The question was raised yesterday of how to change the layer properties. So I'm going to go ahead and just make that quick little change in here. And so one of the things that we want to do is go ahead and issue the command by issuing the S for settings command. And this is where we can then get to the layering control while you're in the software. But in here, what I'm going to do is set it to the C topo minor and C topo major conforming to the National CAD standards. And in this case, I'm going to go from here to here and starting off at elevation 1335 going uphill. We'll go through then and grab those layers out of my layer library because those have already been preset for me, and it'll add those into the listing. Unfortunately, for my case, they are shades of gray. So what I want to do in here is I will change them maybe to green and maybe perhaps a yellow or a red or something like that, or maybe like a light blue or something, just to sort of show something a little more distinctive. So you can sort of see how those things are. Now, in this case, I haven't actually gone through, and I would actually need to probably do a join nearest. So let's actually make some quick changes in here. So I'll go ahead and undo that, because that was one of the things that was sort of vexing about some of the way these contours were provided to us. As it turns out, the design contours in here did not carry through lots of different locations in terms of their overall length. So these were all sort of segmented. Even though they look continuous, they weren't. So one of the things that we would need to do then, or efficiently do then, is get these things joined up. So if we wanted to, what we would probably want to do at this point is look at the join nearest command. So I'm going to go and issue underneath the view menu, I'm going to isolate layers, and we would pick up the index and intermediate contours. And because of the way these polylines come in with their coloring scheme, these are the layers that we're going to be dealing with. And what I would do then is issue the edit join nearest routine. And I could say then, join identical widths on identical layers, only identical elevations, for example. And let's go ahead and set a very tight max separation to join, maybe a 1/10, for example. And if they happen to miss one another, just go ahead and average the endpoints together. So if they miss one another, that they will average them by no more than 5/100ths. And in this case, what I can do is say OK and choose all entities in the drawing. And it'll go through then, and in this case now it's going to join up all these contour segments as much as it can based on those settings that I had specified, and it joined up 1,700 entities. And when I take a look now at these contours, now they are more single uniform polyline entities. And as a result, that single operation will allow me to elevate these contours much more efficiently, so that if I were to come through now and say, okay, let's go back underneath elevate, and again, assign contour elevations, multiple and series, I can go back through here and say 1335 going uphill. So those are some tools that we have that, again, will help make the CAD process much simpler as you're doing your work on the site. So again, to sort of fast forward here just a little bit, then I took some time to put a lot of this material together and work through it, and just again, for the sake of the presentation for the rest of the material for today, go ahead and save this off. Wound up producing a drawing that looks very similar to what I'll show you next. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. I'll actually open up then the Magic of TV drawing that I have here, which was the design. So I took each of my east, west, and pond drawings, put them all together, and started to elevate then all the contours, a lot of the islands, and put them all together. And then also used the 2D align command that we talked about in the presentation yesterday to align the building footprint to the base plan, and got everything aligned so that it sits properly on the site. And the result is basically something that looks very similar to this. And as we take a look at the site now, the only real thing that I haven't really touched on in here was the creation of the building pad. So as I was talking with the original contractor in this particular example, he had indicated that he had wanted the building footprint to be offset by 5 feet for excavation purposes. So we went through and actually traced out the overall building footprint and then offset that polyline by 5 feet. In our case, what we did was drew in, because this is such a sort of a irregularly shaped polygon building footprint, it was not going to be very cohesive or easy to draw that in. So we wanted to, let me go ahead and get what we actually had on the screen here. So let's go back into, let me find out where those layers are here. So let's go back underneath view, and we will say isolate layers. And let's bring that back up here to right about there. I believe that should do it. There we go. Let's see here if I can get to those guys. Yeah. So here's the actual outlines. So let me see if I can get just these guys. There we go. So there's the layers, the polygon frame of the building that we needed to figure out how do we make a building footprint around just this stuff. And turns out we have a routine for that. That makes it very, very handy. So what we wanted to do was to essentially shrink wrap entities around, or shrink wrap a polyline around that building footprint. And there's a couple different ways you can do this sort of efficiently, more or less efficiently. And let's talk about one way to do that. So to draw a perimeter polyline around this building footprint, one way to do that is to utilize selection sets of these polylines that were in here. So I'm going to issue the draw, and then we can use the shrink wrap entities routine. And a lot of people use the shrink wrap entities routine for the creation of boundaries around a surface model. But if you want, we can call this maybe and I'll just call this my building, or my C-BLDG outline 2 layer. I'm going to say by bounded line work only. And I'm going to say OK. And what I need to do now then is select the entities that comprise this bounded polygon building. And you can use pretty much any kind of CAD selection set method that you want. So if I go through and use a fence, I believe I can use this. So my fence option here, if I turn off my snaps, let me go ahead and do that. Let's disable this entity snaps in here. I believe I can use different snap methods in here, or excuse me, different fence methods. So this lets me choose this collection set of entities, and I'll remove this one right here. Oopsie, I just did that wrong here. I just undid let's do that here real quick. Made a bad selection set, so let me just rerun my routine here. So sorry about that. What I wanted to try and mention here was, rather than just using a standard window selection set, most people are familiar with this. People are probably familiar with the crossing selection set. You can also use, what I was trying to get to here was the fence method. So if you could type in fence, you could actually trace along or draw in a single line, for example, that goes through and crosses individual entities. And if you wanted to remove an entity, you can do that and keep on and adding entities. So in here I'm going to add in these entities. It looks like I've got something in here. Well, I'll just go through and quickly grab then as much of these guys in here as I want. So the intent was to try and minimize the amount of mouse clicks in here that that I needed to make, and it turned out that for me and my old skills are sure probably getting a little rusty. What I wanted to do was get into some of these guys. So in some of these circular areas in here, maybe a crossing polygon would be good in here, or again, I might like a fence. So let's go ahead and try that again in here. So if I try the fence, and this is where my snaps are killing me here. Let me disable the snap settings in here. So if I get that in there, what I can do is get through there, and this lets me not have to try and get sort of a rectangular shape. And if I just clip through each of these guys, I can clean up a lot of this material without having to, again, do lots of individual mouse windows, crossing windows and things like that. I can even get around some of this stuff in here if I want. So those guys are now all selected. And let's put another little crossing in here. Let's see, crossing. And we'll get those guys, a couple of these guys. And I think you get the general drill in here. So my intent here now is just to finish up this sort of as quickly as I can. And then I'll need to remove off a couple of the other entities that were part of my original selections in here. So there we go. And let's see, I need to remove, R for remove, that entity and a couple of these guys down in here. So anything that's still ghosted, I want to get removed, and same thing right in here. So all this stuff that's been bounded is fine. And there we go. And to sort of show you then that ultimate bounded polyline, I'm going to go back up to my C building outline layer in here. Let's make it a magenta color. And there we go. So now I have my building polyline, and there it is. So with this polyline boundary drawn in now, I could offset it, and that was, you know, a quick, easy way to draw that polygon boundary in there for me. Then from here, basically, let me go back now and do my view thought on all layers. And then the result was basically I offset it then 5 feet, and that's what became that green line that I had in here. And you can see that offsetted boundary right there. So then, once that was done, we said, okay, we had this drawn in. We went through and let's take a quick peek at the inquiry menu and the drawing inspector again. And as we look at it, this building overhead is what I call this layer I put it on, was actually set to the elevation of the building finished floor elevation right down here. So the offsetted line was set to elevation, but all the building lines themselves were left down at 0. And this is sort of one of the caveats now inside of, not even a caveat, one of the things that people don't often know. Inside of Takeoff, you don't always have to set every design feature line to an elevation to have its material targets adjusted. So what I mean by that is when we take a look and go into Takeoff and we define our layer material target subgrades. All right, I'm going to go through, and actually let's go ahead and do this and see what I have. Nothing for existing, nothing for design, nothing on all these, for everything's set to other right now. So I'm going to go through and actually what I need to do is insert all this into one overall drawing. So this is all still just in my preliminary working drawing right now. So let's just go ahead and get it all here for my volumes, because now we're running short on time. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and save this all out. So let's just go ahead and make a working concept here to get our volumes and get everything done. So I am going to start off with opening up the drawing we started yesterday, which was the OTC drawing. And you'll also notice that this drawing has a rotated north. When I was working on this drawing, because the original layout was rotated, I had issued the underneath the view menu, I can rotate my north rotation. So as I'm working through here, working on a autosave here right now, one of the things that I did was said to go into the view menu and had it set to twist the screen so that my lines were sort of matching what the engineer had laid out for me originally. But north is still north on the screen. And as I'm going through, gotta wait for my autosave to get caught up here. Bear with me for just a moment, please. The ability to rotate the drawing so that I can work with it easily on the screen is made available to me. And as a result, I can continue to do my work with my building laid out horizontally on the screen, but north is still in its true north direction. And that makes it very handy when I want to, again, sort of, do my work. And then when I want to bring this all back together and do my inserts later on, I can undo that twist screen, for example, through view, which is where I did it all right here. So I just said, do a twist screen, line, polyline, or text, and I simply said, make this line, for example, due east. Well, if I want to restore due north, I can just do that and set it to grid north. And there we are. So now we're back into where we want to be, and I'll go ahead and save this drawing out right now. And now I will go into my other drawings that I had from before and get everything all inserted, and we should be good to go. Oh, and I probably have to go back through my whole saves again here. Okay, so as we are going through this, I know again we're running just about out of time, but all the heavy lifting now is done because I've got everything all elevated. I've got all my contours joined. I've got my island set. All I have to do now is just pretty much say, here's the layers that make existing. Here's the layers that make design. Here's what I want to do for my adjustments. Make a couple surface models, calculate my volumes, and I'm pretty much done. So how are we doing for questions, Jim? Anything out there that I can address while this is kicking out my saves?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet? Okay. All right, so as we get through this here, we got just one more little save we got to get done, and then we will have our volumes. Yeah, and actually I think I was just reading through my list of things here. I should just double check on my PowerPoint, make sure I got everything. So we got the PDFs, match line creation, erase, close section sets, join nearest. That's good. Okay, we're going to do the design. Yeah, so we just got just two more little things here, and we'll have everything covered up. So with that, I think we should be just about done. Yeah.
And we're close to on time, so.
Yeah, we're doing all right. I know with the number, yeah, and my poor PC has been number crunching here all day, getting this all done. I should have probably have cleaned out my browser cache here, so or I should have started everything over before I got in here today, but that's okay. So as we're going through, there it is. Now it's all caught up. Okay, so now that we're ready to go, I'm going to go back into File Open and get into what should have been the OTC drawing. That was the one from yesterday that we'd started with just the existing ground contours and the subgrade adjustment that we were taking out for the demolished pavement that we were looking to get rid of. And I want to insert, now just like what we did earlier, I'm going to say draw, and then insert the design drawing. And I'm just going to go ahead and say open, and same 0, 0, 0 coordinate, and we can do an explode at this point. And I sure hope this doesn't have to do another. Oh, it's just doing a load in here. I should probably just double check on the size of that too. The size of that, there we go. Okay, so now at this point we should just be able to do it and explode because everything should be at the proper coordinates, and we'll just go ahead and do an insert. And it should just drop right in there. And with all of our layers already set, then we can just go ahead and start the calculation process. Okay, let's see what we get. And then the other thing that's sort of nice is that as additional changes need to be made, there we go. We can adjust any kind of values for subgrade adjustments and things like that. So now we've got what was just the design that was being brought in, and we can now start to say, okay, let's indicate items. So underneath my set layer for design, I can say, well, that layer is a design, maybe this layer is a design, that layer is a design, any of these contours in here are going to pick up for design. And so I can start to visually pick them up if I want to, or if I have things that are properly structured in terms of the layering scheme. Let's just go ahead and issue the purge command here real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and purge out anything that's unused. I'll just do a purge all right now. This helps clean up my drawing. I'm going to go through and indicate that I want maybe all the C- prefix layers to be in design and all the V- prefixes to be in existing. And let's take a look for my layers. I've got a C- match. Okay, we can just let that one go too. We'll purge that guy out. There we go. And underneath takeoff, for my define layer target material subgrades, there they are. So this was some of the stuff from yesterday. So we said for the demolition of the road, adjust that by 16 inches. For the building outline, move it. So let's move actually a couple of these. These are all going to be civil oriented. Let's move those to design. These are all colors now from the PDFs. We'll leave those as others. And let's take a look now at the design. And there was one that I mispicked. Let's move him back to other. So we can have great control over what we have and don't have in here. And this was one that I drew in earlier, so we're going to move that one back to other. So we don't need that one right now. So that's one that we don't need. So the only thing there I was going to try and mention is, as I have these, the building outline, this is a 2D polyline down at 0. And maybe I want to adjust it for 8 inches of concrete, as an example. And let's just say, again, it's 8 inches in here. And maybe for concrete, I don't know, let's just call it $75 per cubic yard, let's just say, for grins. I don't know what concrete goes for anymore. Density maybe is 150 pounds per cubic foot that they're going to put in. And we'll just say, okay. So even though this is a 2D polyline down at elevation 0, the overhead one has been elevated, this one has not. That's the point I'm trying to get to with all this. I'm going to save these targets and choose exit. And then the last thing I want to do before I make all my volumes is update the design boundary, because the original boundary was drawn to the outer perimeter of my existing ground. So let's just take a quick peek at that. So let's go ahead and display, toggle the display of the different drawings in here. So I'm going to turn off other and just put in a different boundary. All right. So as we have this now, let's put my display back on. There we go. So there's just the display. And let's go ahead and, oh, looks like I have, yeah, that should be fine. So everything else in here is good. So I'm going to go ahead and say draw, and then we'll do a shrink wrap entities. And we'll put in a different across gaps for C-boundary BNDY. And it doesn't matter, we'll make it a 2D polyline, and we'll just do it across all these guys right here. So there's my boundary, and again, for takeoff, and we will say define boundary polyline, set it up right there, and it says we've already got one set. Do you want to clear it? Yes or no? We'll say sure, why not? And we'll pick up this boundary polyline right there, and we're ready to go. So we've already made the existing. Let's remake the design, or let's make a design surface right now. And again, the preliminary goal was just to create just earthwork volumes. So we're going to go ahead and gather up all these polylines now that we have in the drawing, and make those volumes. And again, with some of the polyline, we might have some entries in here that we might need to account for. So we have some small little errors in here. Let's take a peek what we have. So we have a 1 foot vertical edge. Where is that occurring at? Right here. So let's zoom in on that and see what we have. Where was that occurring? Probably we got 2 polyline crossings. We can fix that as we need to. I might not take the time to do that today. Let's zoom to this one here. So there are a couple small little errors in here that we might need to fix. Okay, so the software is telling you where you have some problems. So ultimately, for a more accurate surface model, you're going to want to fix these problems. For right now, I'm going to where these contours cross my curb islands. I'm not going to worry about that right now. They're very small, sort of minute, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I've now got basically my surface models built. We'll take a quick view at them, and in my 3D viewer, we'll take a look. We have the FN model now, the finished model, and we'll take a peek at it. There it is. And with the buildings adjustment that was made, you can sort of see what that looks like. Let's go ahead and exaggerate there, move that shading around here just a little bit, turn the coloring down. There we go. I hope you can see that just a little bit there, how that was accounted for that subgrade adjustment. So now that we've done that, again, we're running just about out of time. The surface model has been built. Now we can go ahead and get some quick volumes on this. And we don't need to update the existing ground surface model. But we will go through and say, let's go ahead and report cut and fill depth zones. If we want to balance the cut and fills, we can. We'll just say OK. And there's the area that will be examined. And the report then will be provided for us that we can then either print out onto the printer or directly to the screen. So right now we've got about 12,000 yards of fill and 6,000 yards cut. So we are going to be short of material on this, and we would then obviously need to lower the site here a little bit to make this all work out. If we want to place this report, for example, into or out to, let's see here, right there, output to screen, we just click on that little button right there, put this in as a piece of MText into the drawing, say OK, and just drop it right there onto the screen. And I can go ahead and choose exit, and then there's that report that I can then have as part of my drawing. Okay. Then for material quantities, we can go ahead, and if we want to take a look at those, we've got different reports in here. Let's just do a quick little standard report on that. And for that, we can say, let's just do the entire drawing. We'll say OK. And it'll go through and calculate out, just in this case, maybe the building outline and maybe the demolition, and also the amount of material here, just in the cost estimates based on the dollar volumes that I had put in, which again, in this case, are the numbers that I had provided to the software. So we can start to adjust this as needed. And and start to get some pay estimates for what we are putting into the actual job site. And this too can also be either printed out to the printer, put onto the screen, and then also adjusted as additional material comes into our calculations. And because this is all layer-based now, any further adjustments into the layer material target subgrades are going to be factored in for this automatically. The last thing I want to talk about briefly in here is a question that came up to me earlier today with a client that called in, sort of in response to all this, was outputting all the models then out to machine control. So as we are producing then these different surface models, these are being exported out to a Carlson tin file format. It's very easy then to take the different surface models. Then you can say let's export these out to different types of surface model file types. So if you want to export out to a Trimble TTM file format or the TopCon TN3 file format, you can. Just a matter of then of saying, okay, which file type do you want? And you would just choose the particular Carlson surface model type or file that you want, and you just export it out to then the desired file format. Alternatively, you can also simply choose to export out to, for example, the more germane land XML file type, which can be handled to sent to just about anybody. So between the reports that you get, the output types, land XML, standard DWG types that we produce, we provide a lot of different ways to get data in and out of the software program. That gives you ultimate flexibility and ease of use. And again, with all this material that's out there, one of the last things that, again, a lot of people always like to see is making sure that we've produced all this stuff in a format that, again, they can validate. So, again, as we've put this all out here, this was our C-design format. Let's put a DZNGN, there we go. And let's just put all this data right out there. Oh, and that's the other thing I probably should have done is showed you the cut fill color map. So as that's rendering out there, I'll go ahead and put that cut fill color map in there for you. That's another thing that people like to see. So if I want to quickly show that cut fill color map, we'll just go ahead and place that. So the base surface model, for example, might be the original ground surface model compared to the finished ground surface model, and you just choose those two surface models and any inclusion, exclusion perimeters, which in this case I'll just say none. Actually, I don't like that. Let's go ahead and choose OK. And it'll just render in then your cut fill color map for you real quick. So that's sort of what I had for today. And there's a quick little legend for you. This legend too, or this cut fill color map is another feature that can also be rendered out to the Google Earth world, so that if all of a sudden you wanted to see all what this looks like as well, you can set up different renderings for this. You can also take a look at your cut fill color map along with the building footprints and the design contours also superimposed right out there on top of Google Earth. So we are 5 minutes after the hour. Any questions, Jim, that I can address for the group?
Oh, maybe one or two here. One of the questions was, when you did the shrink wrap around the building,
Mm-hmm.
I think the question is, and maybe it wasn't obvious what you were doing was a shrink wrap, but the real challenge there was because you couldn't isolate the layers to be just the building because they were sorted only by color,
Mm-hmm.
you had to be very careful and select just the building to get that shrink wrap line and not pick up any of the other extraneous pieces out there. And I think maybe that wasn't terribly clear going through it, because we had a question about why you didn't just shrink wrap it.
Yeah, it's a good question and a good point. So if I go back to and open up the West drawing in here, originally when the PDF came in, the entities that were on here, with the way these layers were, if we go back and purge everything that's in here out of here, so this should be all pretty much as clean as it is, there's not a real easy way to get to just the building outline. So if I was to say, let's isolate, view and isolate layers, and just isolate, just for example, even just that single right there, that's one entity in the selection set. I'm left with arrowheads, hatch patterns, and all sorts of things that are not the building. And as a result, as I get into here, I have to be very careful about what I select, because if I select stuff that is not part of that building outline, I'm going to be getting a building perimeter that is not the building perimeter. So as I was tracing through my building, I was trying to be very careful with the things that I was selecting, and getting just what I ultimately wanted, which was just this, these kinds of entities. And that was the reason I was sort of going through that exercise.
A couple of other items. General request for future webinars to do something that gets more into prepping data sets for surface modeling, dealing with various anomalies and those types of things that you get in there. You touched on a lot of those in the 2 days here, but there's a lot of other tools and a lot of other options that can be discussed and demonstrated in future webinars.
Oh, absolutely. We have, collections of tools for roading that I would love to show. For cross-sectioning is a very common one that we see for highway plans. And there is, just a plethora of different tools that are found throughout the software that, can really, really make your job very easy. Just knowing where they are and how to use them. And it's like everything else. There's so many tools in the toolbox. It's amazing of what's here. And I agree with you. We have a lot of stuff that's there. This could be days and days and days of material to talk about. So we did try to touch on some of the very common ones that